You know what's weird? Revisiting old games that you used to play hours on as a kid. You have these ideas of what you thought you played in the back of your mind, or at least how the game made you feel. And then when you go to play the game again as an adult, you realize why kids are fucking stupid and should be given no rights. Yeah, the vast majority of games I used to play as a kid are mediocre to dog shit. But hey, who can blame you? You had so much free time on your hands, it was bound to happen at some point. Especially on the PS2 and Wii, where shovelware, movie tie-in games, poorly optimized ports, and Trek games dominated their libraries. When you're a kid, you don't look up Metacritic scores and compare which game is best for your tastes. You simply point at the game cover, say, "I like Jimmy Neutron," and come Christmas time, you get this.
Hey, Carl, were you playing with any of my pets?
No, Jimmy.
And you'll probably love it, because it has your favorite characters and it distracts you from your parents' crumbling marriage homework for a couple hours. Now, this is not always what happens. Occasionally you'll get that one licensed game that had a lot of work put into it, like Battle for Bikini Bottom, or Star Wars Battlefront. But those are the exception, not the rule. With that in mind, when I decided this year that I should revisit LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, I was expecting something more akin to this than this. I mean, this is a game based on a toy line based on a movie franchise that features this scene.
Oh!
Could this really be as good as I remembered it being? Yeah, it was. LEGO Star Wars is a weird game. Good, but very, very weird. Okay, so let's retell the, at the time, 6 Star Wars movies that everyone knows, and let's replace the humans with LEGO minifigures. Oh, and also there's no talking, and the levels are based around puzzles, and when you die in the game you make an incomprehensible shriek into the abyss. Sounds like every kid's dream, right?
Correct!
This game was cracked to 10-year-old me. Even after I'd finished all the levels, I'd spent an ungodly amount of time in free play, collecting all the mini-kits and buying all the characters. Now sure, I'd never 100% of the game as a kid, but I spent so much time in the game that I may as well have. But now, as a 21-year-old, I can brag about 100%ing a game that is designed for children, and none of you guys can take that away from me. And man, this game still mostly holding up was one of the biggest surprises of this year. Besides a couple other things, of course, but, you know. Sure, the game isn't perfect. The vehicle levels make me want to gouge out my own eyeballs, but it really captivated me. Once I replayed the first level, I couldn't help but finish the whole game in one sitting. There's just something magical about this game. Something pure and timeless that other licensed games at the time simply didn't have. I mean, there's a reason why the developers focused entirely on making more LEGO games heavily based on the formula set in LEGO Star Wars. They've been trying to recreate the magic ever since, and while later games are quite superior in terms of gameplay and graphics, LEGO Star Wars just comes with that special rough-around-the-edges charm to it. And I thought it would be interesting to study what that charm is, exactly. Is it in the gameplay, character selection, collectathon aspect, and level design? Or maybe it's in the humor, cutscenes, uniqueness, and franchise it's based upon? The answer is yes. I will now explain to you in excruciating detail why this game is so good, as well as recount my experiences replaying it as an adult, for the next unspecified amount of time. Buckle up, because this is going to be a long one. I bet a lot of you guys don't know this, but the LEGO game franchise has sold around 200 million units. This places it in the top 10 of all game franchises in sales. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either when I was researching this. To better visualize how big this is, know that The Legend of Zelda, you know, the world-famous adventure series that revolutionized the gaming industry starting back in 1986, has only sold half that amount. Even more, the LEGO series has surpassed such titans of sales as Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Halo, The Elder Scrolls, Smash Bros, The Sims, Sonic, Assassin's Creed, and Madden. So this is a serious force to be reckoned with in the games industry. But what I find to be really fascinating about this is the fact that nobody talks about these games. At least on YouTube, the only videos I could find discussing this franchise are for nostalgic purposes, or information in the form of top 10 lists. Please kill me if I ever make a top 10 video. It's incredibly rare to find someone who takes this franchise seriously and analyzes why it was so successful in the first place. I think most people just dismiss it as a kid's game, and while I agree that it's certainly directed towards younger players, so is Mario, so is Sonic, so is Pokemon. Oh yeah, and so is Star Wars.
It's a film for 12-year-olds.
That hasn't stopped serious analyses from being conducted on these properties, so it shouldn't stop a review of LEGO Star Wars. Anyway, while it may be correct to say that LEGO Star Wars is the driving force behind those ridiculously huge sales numbers, it is a little misleading, as there were LEGO games created between 1995 and 2005. None of them quite had the same success as LEGO Star Wars, but there was the hugely popular LEGO Island, which went on to sell nearly 1 million copies. I have extremely vague memories of this game, but all of them envisioned a game that looked a lot better than this. It's a little rough around the edges, to be generous. But to be fair, it was 1997, and this was considered photorealistic for the time, so I won't be too harsh. It featured an open world and a few types of missions you can complete on your own time, so if that's your thing, then try it out. It's interesting that this game probably gets the general idea of LEGO down a bit better than its following games. You know, like how most people play with Legos. You dump out a whole bunch of them, make a town, and make up weird stories for your OC characters. It really gives you a complete sandbox to play around with. That being said, it doesn't make for a hugely compelling game. I'm just being honest here. If you really want to try it out, then go ahead. It's aged a little bit though. But I do think that a return to this style of game, especially after the success of Minecraft, could result in a decent game. I guess there won't ever really be another game like LEGO Island, especially since these sales numbers are pretty incredible without the sandbox design, so it's a bit of a shame, but hey, time marches forward. You have to let go.
No! I don't want to go! No! No! No!
Besides LEGO Island 1 and 2, yeah, it got a sequel, it's not that much better. LEGO was kinda struggling in the games department around the early 2000s. I mean, it was bad enough that not even the Bionicle games could save them from it. And you know what they say, once Bionicle falls, so does the world. So in 2004, LEGO Interactive, the official LEGO gaming division, shut its doors. But some former employees were not having it. They knew that LEGO games could be better, and feature this noise in them. So they formed their own new and improved game publishing company, known as Giant Interactive. Meanwhile, in England,
I don't think it's funny.
fledgling game developer Traveller's Tales was creating several licensed titles, as well as collaborating on a few major franchises at the time. You guys remember that weirdly good Toy Story 2 game on the PS1? Yep, that's from them. They're also the reason why Sonic R, Sonic 3D Blast, and Crash Twinsanity exist. Now, I have never played these games, so judge them as you will, but I will say with confidence that they showed that they were at least a competent and creative studio with these games. So when the time would finally come, when the heavens met the earth, Traveller's Tales would be ready to make their Mona Lisa. All it needed was a certain IP owned by LucasArts. That's right, it was Howard the Duck. That's right, it was Star Wars. So in 2005, the stars aligned and Giant Interactive published, with Traveller's Tales developing, LEGO Star Wars the video game. It was released to mostly positive reviews, and it absolutely crushed it in sales. Remember that LEGO Island sold nearly 1 million units in its lifetime? Yeah, well, LEGO Star Wars made 3 million in a year. The PS2 version of the game was the 10th best-selling single-platform game of 2005, meaning it stood shoulder to shoulder with Pokemon Emerald, Star Wars Battlefront 2, and a whole lot of Madden games, which is pretty nuts. It ended up selling nearly 7 million copies in its lifetime, showing that yes, there is definitely an interest in this type of game. It would be hard to find a kid who hasn't played or at least heard of this game during this time period. The shit was like a fungus, spreading everywhere. But good, I guess. What the heck is a good fungus, anyway? I guess this one's pretty nice. While it may have sounded weird at the time, in retrospect the creation of this game makes perfect sense. LEGO makes money. Star Wars makes money. Games, profits. LEGO Star Wars, easy cash. Star Wars games, do I need to say more? Literally any combination of these words is going to sell like hotcakes. Anyway, it was clear that this game had caught on with the general public. So Traveller's Tales bought out Giant Interactive, and voila! We have TT Games, the company which is still pumping out LEGO games to this day. As of 2020, 26 LEGO games have followed LEGO Star Wars, with no signs of slowing down. I can also tell you that I have played an embarrassing amount of these games. Some of them are really good, while some are mediocre. But they come mostly as a guilty pleasure to me. But before all the LEGO Batman games and the Indiana Jones games and the Marvel games, we only had the LEGO Star Wars games. There was a lot riding on the success of the next LEGO game. It clearly had to be based on the original trilogy, so lots of Star Wars fans could be upset if it flopped. But it also had to follow up the overnight success of the original game. A lot could go wrong with a sequel, but none of it did. LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, came out on September 11, 2006. Wait, really? Oh my god, that's really funny. And everyone loved it, minus the GBA port. Remember that Lego Island sold under 1 million in its lifetime? Of course you do, I reminded you like a minute ago. Anyway, Lego Star Wars 2 sold 1.1 million in its opening week. The game ended up selling around 8 million copies total, beating its predecessor soundly. So TT Games was up to something here. They were also enamored with praise over this game, specifically with regard to its humor and level design. This game was featured on many websites' top 10 list of the year, and even won a fucking BAFTA for best gameplay. To put that into context, that award in later years would go to Modern Warfare, Arkham Asylum, and Super Mario Galaxy 2. That's pretty insane to me, I don't know about you. This was the game that really cemented the legacy of not just the LEGO Star Wars series, but all LEGO games created afterward. So what happens when you make 2 critically acclaimed best-selling games for the PS2 and Xbox and you hear about a new generation of consoles in development? Well, it's easy. You just combine the 2 games and put it out on the PS3, Xbox 360, and Wii. This is the game that I will be referring to this whole video, and it's the game most people think about when you say LEGO Star Wars. Sorry, Clone Wars fans. LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is more than just a mishmash of the 2 games, though. There are subtle differences that make it a unique game. For example, Episode 2 gets a whole new level, and a few vehicle levels in the prequels are completely redesigned. For the better, actually. Bounty Hunter missions were included, and new characters were added into the mix. There's really no reason to go back to the old games, because even the old levels are located in this game, albeit locked away as bonus levels. Unless you just really love Dexter's Diner in the prequels, which I can't blame you. That place is perfect. The Complete Saga is unironically one of the best pieces of Star Wars media outside of the films. It's endearing as hell, relaxing, fun, and nails the atmosphere of Star Wars nearly perfectly. I think simplicity really helps make this game iconic. The whole game can be completed in a couple hours. Lightsaber characters have 3 moves. Blaster characters can't aim but can shoot at basic targets. Hell, they couldn't even dodge until LEGO Star Wars 2. Some prequel levels can be completed in 5 minutes. There's no dialogue, only miming. You can never truly lose at a level, or permanently die. It's a game optimized for chill, low-effort players. Predominantly children. And I honestly think that's why the game caught on for so many people. Myself included. It wasn't just because this game featured Star Wars characters, even though I'm certain that's why a lot of kids got this game for Christmas. It's because at its core, this game is fun and unique. Which brings us to... The gameplay of LEGO Star Wars is nothing earth-shattering, but is key to why this game works so well. After all, this game's design serves as a framework for nearly 20 following LEGO games. They are incredibly similar in design, for better and for worse, but there is a reason why. The formula is fucking great. The game seeks to retell the stories of the, at the time, 6 Star Wars movies through LEGO characters pantomiming their way through the stories. It's charming, but that only makes up the hour or so of actual cutscenes. The game is split between the 6 episodes, along with some miscellaneous activities located within the hub world of Mos Eisley Cantina. Within each episode are 6 individual levels based on scenes of the respective movie. Each level features a linear path of loosely connected areas. Throughout this path, you will be attacked by trilogy-appropriate enemies, as well as face a few puzzles. And I use puzzles lightly here because they don't actually make you think more than a 5-year-old, but I'm pretty sure that's the point of them. The puzzles are tied exclusively to the characters. For example, protocol droids like C-3PO or TC-14 are the only types of playable character that can interact with these switches to open doors. However, they cannot jump, leading to situations like these in Episode 2. All of the problem solving in this game is the result of knowledge of character traits and which characters you have on you at any given moment. Yeah, it's certainly pretty basic and tedious at times, but it's addicting as shit considering the character roster you have. Levels are played in story mode at first, with cutscenes and mandatory characters, and are then unlocked for free play afterward. This is the real fun of LEGO Star Wars. You can choose any characters of the massive 160-man roster to complete the levels again. But this time, you're hunting down collectibles with your new abilities, opening up previously unseen parts of the levels. It's this newfound freedom as well as desire to collect these damn mini-kits that really lets this game shine. Of the collectibles you will be hunting for, the mini-kits are certainly the most iconic and irresistible to find. Every level features 10 mini-kits which, when combined, will create a mini LEGO set representing the level, and can then be viewed in the cantina. It also gives you a decent amount of studs, but I'll get to that later. These things are basically crack. Whenever one is nearby, it gives off this humming noise to taunt you. And when you pick one up, the game gives you an incredibly loud and congratulatory sound effect. It's practically impossible to not look for these things. They are addicting as hell. They are also hidden behind more puzzles that involve character traits, with a few exceptions, so they are relatively easy to pick up in free play. Particularly hard to find is each level's red brick. These unlock the ability to buy extras, which range from, huh? To, okay, that's kinda cool. To, oh my god, this is so broken. For the most part, they're a fun addition to the game, but the stud multipliers in particular destroy any sort of fun in the endgame. Speaking of studs, breaking objects in the game will net you some cool cash known as studs. They come in 4 denominations. Silver is 10, gold is 100, blue is 1,000, and purple is 10,000. However, the purple stud is literally only used in about 2 levels, so it's best to treat it as if it didn't exist. Studs are scattered throughout levels pretty well, except for Episode 3 Level 1, and serve as the only method to buy characters, so make sure to break literally everything in a level. Characters are priced pretty well to maintain a good pacing as you play through story mode, and the most powerful characters in the game are placed behind a million stud paywall. Another incentive to go stud collecting is the True Jedi achievement, wherein after you acquire a certain amount of studs in a level, you are given the coolest sounding animation in gaming. The only issue with studs in this game is when you figure out how the stud multiplier extras work. These extras, starting with ×2, will give you double the amount of studs when you collect them. Obviously, this makes the game much easier, but it's locked behind a million stud paywall. Sounds good. The problem is with the fact that the ×4, ×6, ×8, and ×10 multipliers exist, and in fact, stack on top of each other. Yes, this means that the game will get exponentially easier as you keep getting more multipliers, eventually resulting in a ×3,840 stud multiplier. This makes a huge portion of the game trivial, and I highly recommend either staying away from these things until the very end, or only using the ×2 multiplier for general collecting. Other than that, gold bricks are the last type of collectible, and are the most general type. Get all mini-kits in a level, get a gold brick. Get True Jedi, gold brick. Finish a level for the first time, gold brick. The only venues where you exclusively get gold bricks is through bounty hunter missions, which are extremely okay by the way, through the store at the cantina, or through challenge modes. You use these to access new levels, like the brand new Anakin's Flight or the old pod race level, which is still the biggest fucking piece of shit level ever, or the Lego City Collectathons. They give you pretty solid rewards, and I think they add to the replayability of the game a whole bunch. So we've got a game with a great structure, large swath of characters, and good selection of collectibles, which is all fine and dandy. But how are the levels themselves? This is when I transition. I'm gonna level with you guys. I know nothing about game design, but I can draw graphs, and that's good enough for this channel. Listen, I'm not analyzing the game design of The Last of Us or Hollow Knight. This is a licensed game based on a toy version of a movie series that has this scene in it.
Oh dear.
So I feel like I can have a decent, credible opinion on this game's level design. That being said, my most watched video is me reviewing Gatorade, so don't assume this opinion is coming from an expert. With that out of the way, on the whole, I think LEGO Star Wars is well designed. I think mini-kits are spaced out quite well, puzzles are good enough for kids or low-stakes players, and each level captures the feel of the movie scene nearly perfectly. The character roster is balanced in each level, without compromising the scene it's based on. That being said, it is incredibly clear to me, and I assume many others, that the original trilogy levels are miles better than the prequel levels. As much as I love the prequel levels, I did play that game first when it came out in 2005 as a 6-year-old and loved it so much that I bought 2 copies for some reason, so don't tell me I didn't enjoy it. They are flimsy compared to the original levels. Now this, I think, is due to the prequels being the very first LEGO levels that TT has created, as well as the strict deadline imposed for Episode 3. For those who are unaware, LEGO Star Wars the video game released on March 29, 2005, and astute fans will notice that this was not the only big Star Wars release of the year. Revenge of the Sith released just 2 months later on May 19th. First off, and funniest to me, this means that LEGO Star Wars spoiled major elements of Episode 3 months before it came out. I mean, imagine if, before the highly anticipated release of The Force Awakens, an officially sanctioned LEGO version of the movie released 2 months before, revealing a Han Solo's death, Kylo Ren's lineage, and the final Starkiller base fight. That shit would just not fly by today, and it's also hilarious. Secondly, and most vitally, this meant that Episode 3 in the game was rushed as hell, and not even technically based on the final cut of the movie. TT Games was only given a rough cut of the film, and while they got the important scenes down, the opening ship battle, the Grievous fight, and the final Mustafar duel, some things are a little off. Okay, more like a lot. Let's talk about Ruin of the Jedi. This is the 5th level of Episode 3, and features Yoda and Obi-Wan traveling to the Jedi Temple after Anakin's assault on it. Take note that in the movie, Yoda and Obi-Wan are in the Jedi Temple for maybe 2 minutes, fight clones for about 15 seconds, end up finding the hologram of Anakin killing younglings, and send a holocron message to the galaxy. That's it. So how do you make a level out of holograms of dead children? Well, to explain this, Ruin of the Jedi is actually based on a deleted scene, where Obi-Wan and Yoda discover clones disguised as Jedi and fight their way into the inner chamber. But along the way, for some reason, this scene was cut out of the movie, leaving the game with a level almost entirely based on something that only George Lucas knew about. Not to say that it's a bad level, I think it's okay, but it certainly sticks out. One last thing. The LEGO cutscene shows Shaak Ti getting killed by Anakin, which occurs in a deleted scene in Episode 3.
What is it, Skywalker?
There's also another deleted scene of Shaak Ti getting killed by Grievous in the same movie.
Stinking Jedi.
And she also dies in The Force Unleashed, and the Clone Wars. So Shaak Ti dying will never not be funny to me. Besides that level, Episode 3's levels tend to be pretty bare bones. Chapter 1 is a railroad shooter that can easily be exploited for studs. Chapter 2 is a pretty straightforward and basic level. Chapter 3 is a boss fight which can be completed in literally 2 minutes. Chapter 4 is an overly long Kashyyyk level, Chapter 5 is hardly canon, and Chapter 6, while being the strongest level in the game, is over before you know it. That being said, I think that the prequel levels are still pretty fun, even if they are not exactly complex. Episode 1 in particular is just really solid in all levels, even the pod race. Episode 2 has standout levels in Camino and Geonosis, and Episode 3 still has that LEGO charm to it. And I can see some people thinking the prequel levels are their favorites. Maybe they prefer the simple, quick bites of Star Wars compared to the drawn-out original trilogy levels. I personally do not, though. I prefer the more involved puzzles and detailed environments of the original trilogy levels. But to each their own. To get a better feel of what I mean, let's compare some levels. Let's start with Negotiations, the first level ever created. Like every level, this one is designed as a straight path with the character switching as an integral part of problem solving. Nothing wrong with that, other than the fact that it makes this level a little claustrophobic. Most of this level is in hallways, with a brief open area at the very end. That is, until you play in free play, where several large areas are opened up to you. Now let's take a look at Jabba's Palace, the first level of Episode 6. You may notice that yes, it's ultimately linear, but it's quite a bit more complex, even in story mode. Let's take this room for an example. Here, you're faced with Gamorrean guards, and 2 barriers to the next door, one for protocol droids and one for astromechs. But you need to get the droids stuck in the cages by assembling a remote-controlled platform, dragging it to the left cage, jumping into the cage, and doing it again for the other droid. These puzzles are far more complex than anything in the prequel levels, and flesh out the environment just a bit more. Now I will give the prequel levels some slack. The last Episode 3 level, known as Darth Vader, is, I shit you not, the most mechanically interesting level in the game. I do still think that the original trilogy levels are more refined and deep than the prequel levels, but this level was able to explore and deconstruct a mechanic that we have taken to be a given in this game. You see, this level is, for the most part, just a timed hallway. You need to use both characters, in some cases simultaneously, in order to solve the puzzles before the timer runs out, and evade lava through platforming. Nothing too crazy, right? Wrong. Once you reach the ending, the game forces you to fight the other character. You have become the boss character, where you both have 10 hearts each, and the level will not finish until Anakin is defeated. Considering that you were just using Anakin and Obi-Wan to solve puzzles together, this actually comes with a level, albeit pretty small, of emotion, which works exceptionally well for the scene it is trying to replicate. This works even better if you're playing local co-op with a friend, but single-player mode still delivers this twist very well. In all of this game, the characters that you have in a level are forever yours to swap around with, and this level is the only one to try to play around with this expectation by making you have to kill your co-op partner. It's just kind of genius, especially for, what type of game this is. Speaking of weirdly complex levels, Episode 6's Speeder Showdown is also among the cream of the crop. It may still be linear, but how it cycles through its different segments gives the level the appearance of non-linearity, which is highly appreciated for this kind of game. The central mechanic of this level is, of course, the speeder bikes, which follow a straight path and only allow shooting and turning. There are 4 separate segments of speeder bikes, spliced in with normal character gameplay, that see you fighting off scout troopers. I will admit that like all vehicle levels in this game, the speeder bikes are difficult to control at times and often frustratingly tedious. Foreshadowing. But it's how the speeder segments are intertwined with the overall level that makes this level pretty interesting to analyze. The speeder chase cycles through the entire map, past the 3 separate areas that you can actually walk on, giving this level an unprecedented feeling of connectedness. Every batch of scout troopers defeated will railroad you into the next area, where you are required to destroy a relay with an ATST. This happens 4 times, but how you get the ATST changes each time, and the relays are not in any way numbered. So to the layman's eyes, or just kids in general, it looks like the level can be completed in any sequence, but no, this is merely an illusion. Every time you play the level, it's the same sequence of areas, which can be disappointing to some, but I feel that it's still quite impressive that the feeling of nonlinearity was so strong. It also serves as a foundation for the actual nonlinear LEGO levels in the future, so I have to commend them for that. Before we move on to the forbidden topic, I would like to gush about one more level, that level being Episode 2's Discovery on Camino. And not because it's anything special, it doesn't play with mechanics or pretend that it's not linear, but because I just really like it. It may also be due to the fact that Camino is one of my favorite planets in Star Wars, and the Slave One one of my favorite ships. But hey, I never said I was unbiased. I think this serves as an ideal level in this game. Not too simple, but not so complex that it becomes frustrating. Looking at the overall design, it doesn't look too complex. In fact, it's par for the course for prequel levels. Very linear, with it opening up a tad bit in free play. So it pales in comparison to, say, Jabba's Palace, but outshines Negotiations and many other prequel levels pretty easily. Firstly, it just looks so darn cool. You get a nice view of the rainy exterior, pretty white interiors, Obi-Wan Starfighter, the cloning facilities, Jango Fett's room, and the Slave One, all accompanying the incredible Camino theme. Seriously, that theme is so perfect for this level that I just associate rain with it now. Secondly, there's a nice variety of gameplay here, mostly involving the interplay between Jedi and astromech units. There's 2 circular rooms to start off with, allowing you to explore a bit around you. Then there's the unique back and forth with hunting Jango Fett, culminating in a pretty solid boss fight. The bridge chase is unique, the turret section is interesting, and you just get a nice variety of gimmicks, without one staying for too long. Lastly, this level has the best mini-kit in the game. I'll let it speak for itself. But yeah, it's just a really good level, and a good symbol for the uniqueness and quality of the other levels in the game. Alright, we've reached the point of the video where I simply cannot keep avoiding the topic. Even if I criticize the prequel levels for their general simplicity, I enjoy almost all of them, and understand if you favor them over the original levels. With that being said, I do not think that there is a single good vehicle level in this game. I think that there are okay vehicle levels, but there are no good ones. I'm sorry, but it's the only part of the game which I will happily criticize, and I think it really drags the game down. For those who are unaware, each episode has at least one level dedicated entirely to vehicles. Makes sense, Star Wars is known for its iconic vehicle designs and battles. So it would be criminal to not include them in any way. And to the game's credit, they made a whole bunch of vehicles playable in the game. And they look pretty good. However, how cool the playable ship looks is not enough to distract you from the genuine awfulness that is the vehicle levels. These levels vary between extremely short and anticlimactic to oh my god, please end my suffering now. If you haven't noticed yet, it's the latter category which gives these levels the infamy it rightfully deserves. And unfortunately, the original trilogy is full of these. So why are these so bad exactly? It's the fucking tow cable! The tow cable is used by a certain type of ship, and is utilized in a handful of vehicle levels for progression. It allows the ship to drag a bomb with it and smash it at an enemy or a destructible wall. Sounds pretty basic, but there's a catch. If you die or the bomb falls out of range, you lose the bomb. And to see how this makes gameplay incredibly dull and infuriating at the same time, let's take a look at Hoth Battle. Hoth Battle is one of the worst pieces of shit levels I've ever played in a video game. I'm not sure how they took one of the best battles in Star Wars and threw it down the toilet. Oh wait, I do know. First off, endlessly respawning enemies. I'm sure we all love that trope, mowing down endless hordes of enemies with no sign of progress. Always the mark of a great level. Secondly, the tow cable is essential to completion. So your goal is to take the bomb, and pray to God it doesn't get caught in the terrain as you use it to blow up blockades. But the terrain isn't the only obstacle. Oh boy, no. There's ATSTs, which can kill you easily, making you lose your progress. There's probe droids, which if not destroyed will connect their tow cable to the bomb, stopping you dead in your tracks. And finally, there's the AT-ATs, which... oof. To kill these things, you need to do a couple loop-de-loops around them, wait for them to fall, grab a bomb, drag it over to them, avoiding terrain, probes, and ATSTs, and then aim the bomb to hit the down target. All in a time limit of about 20 seconds. It makes me fucking scream sometimes when any one of these steps fails. Maybe a probe droid grabs the bomb, holding you in place for just enough time for the AT-AT to get back up. Maybe some ATSTs killed you, costing you precious time. Or maybe your bomb got caught on the awful glitchy terrain. Or maybe, and this is the most infuriating case, you get to the AT-AT, but the shitty janky physics don't react how you want it to, allowing the AT-AT to get back up and you have to restart the whole damn thing again. Fuck me! Hoth Battle is the worst example of a vehicle level, but its problems encapsulate them all quite nicely. The dumb tow cable mechanics are used in Gunship Cavalry to similar effect, although it is restricted to only one area. Vehicle smart bombs, which are these purple orbs, are much better than the tow cable, but are still a pain in the ass. A lot of the pain with smart bombs is shared with the tow cable. They are hard to find initially, can be easily lost, and require lots of backtracking. The worst offender of this is Falcon Flight, especially when you have to go through the big worm's mouth. By the way, it's called an Exogorth, just if you want to know. To get smart bombs, but one trip is not enough for the barrier ahead, so you gotta go through the same corridor twice. Not as interesting the second time, I'd say. There's also endless enemies, because why not? Falcon Flight shares the same smart bomb problem with Bounty Hunter Pursuit, the beginning of Into the Death Star, and Rebel Attack. The only vehicle levels that I consider passable are the ones that completely throw out these mechanics. Battle over Coruscant is an on-rail shooter, which requires very little other than holding down the shooting button. Great place to farm for studs, by the way. Into the Death Star is mostly a long path into the core of the Death Star with occasional smart bombs. Most Espapod race is a unique, race that is untimed but features interesting level design and obstacles. Very big side note, this is for the complete Saga version. The original pod race, which is an unlockable bonus mission in this game, might just end up being the worst vehicle mission, and worst mission in the game. And if you played the original one, you know the fucking PTSD that it gave you. This is a timed race, which makes sense, duh. But the time it gives you to complete a section of the map gets exponentially smaller as the level progresses. Oh, you made it out of the first segment with 4 seconds left to spare? Good for you, now do this whole segment flawlessly to finish with 0.5 seconds left. And I mean flawlessly. The last stretch is insanely unfair. Maybe a rock hits you, or you get snagged on the terrain, or you get shot by a Tusken Raider. Anything will stop your run. Everything must go right. It's a classic case of difficulty that feels completely artificial and cheap, which sticks out like a sore thumb with every other level, and runs antithetical to the game's core design. Thank Christ it was replaced with the untimed version. But be warned, you have to finish the original version to 100% the game, so be prepared for about an hour of suffering. Anyway, if it wasn't abundantly clear by now, I think the only true problem with the complete saga is its vehicle levels. Every other criticism is pretty minor. They really do drag the game to a frustrating and irritating halt. Fortunately, TT Games has vastly improved their vehicle levels in later games. Just look at the Clone Wars or The Force Awakens. So it's good that they listen to feedback. Regardless, these levels still remain in this collection, and thus dampen the otherwise fantastic experience. They're not enough to make the game unplayable or awful, they just tarnish the game a bit. But hey, maybe someone really likes them, and more power to them. Okay, that's enough criticism of the game for now. On to... Star Wars is the king of cool-looking characters, and most importantly, wasted characters. Dang, this Boba Fett looks cool as hell, and his ship is awesome. Oh, he's dead now, okay. Darth Maul? Holy shit, a double-bladed lightsaber? Oh, he's dead. General Grievous has 4 lightsabers? Awesome! Oh, it's 2 now? That's still cool. Oh, okay. Well, at least my favorite blue elephant alien, Max Rebo, is still going strong. Seriously, I could fill out an entire list of cool-looking Star Wars characters who were criminally underutilized before their deaths, be it the entire Jedi Order in the prequels, or Phasma in the sequels, or the bounty hunters in the original trilogy. It's honestly a trope at this point. But this issue actually turns into a positive with the LEGO games, as the characters are so incredibly basic that it's easy to pad out the roster with whoever the fuck you want. Oh, we're low on bounty hunters? How about we get that robot bounty hunter thing in Empire? No, not that robot, the other one. Yeah, that's him. Low on high jump characters? Fuck it. Let's get that Gungan that told Jar Jar that he was in Big Doo-Doo. Low on Jedi? Yeah, well, there's no fucking shortage of these guys. Ayla Secura, Shakti, Luminara Unduli, Kit Fisto, Plo Koon. Did any of these guys get any lines in the prequels? No, but who fucking cares? They look rad as hell. Put them in. It's such a love letter to Star Wars that it essentially normalized the weird-looking background characters in the community. You could play a level as Luke Skywalker and Dexter Jetster, or Darth Vader and Boss Nass if you wanted to, and it wouldn't feel out of place. It also did wonders with the unification of prequel and original trilogy characters, with a pretty equal distribution in the cast. Characters are split into separate groups depending on the abilities they have, with several overlapping skills. For example, Darth Vader can use the dark side and access Imperial panels. However, for the most part, every character fits into one ability group, and most conflict in the game is resolved through switching between several characters of different groups. First, we have Jedi, who come with the standard lightsaber and the ability to interact with objects that glow blue or green. These are a huge portion of the cast and are pretty fun to play as. Similarly, Sith have their corresponding lightsaber as well as the ability to interact with objects that glow red. They can also interact with blue and green objects for some reason. Definitely breaks the lore, but what are you gonna do? These are super fun to play as, especially Palpatine and Dooku, as they have the ability to electrocute you to death. Grapplers are the plurality of the cast, each one being equipped with a standard gun that can act as a grappling hook over red spaces. Jumpers are characters who can, jump high. The 4 that make up this group are Jar Jar Binks, Captain Tarples, General Grievous, and the Magna Guards. Really weird group. Anyway, there's also the shorty group for small people, because why not? Small characters like Kid Anakin can crawl through hatches, although Yoda cannot, which still keeps me up at night. For puzzles, we have protocol droids, which can access corresponding panels but cannot jump, as well as astromech droids that also access panels and cannot jump, but can instead hover for a short period of time. Bounty hunters can blow up silver objects and access panels, and are personally my favorite units to play as. Boba and Jango in particular are incredibly fun to blow people up with. Members of the Empire are considered Imperial and can access door panels. Lastly, there are ghost characters, who are Jedi with invincibility, but are locked off until the endgame, and also cost a cool million studs. There's also a group of characters with no abilities, like Boss Nass, PK Droid, and the Gonk Droid, just to round out the cast in case you're into useless characters. Hey, I won't judge. It's a pretty solid distribution, the only weak groups being high jumpers and shorties. But as a whole, the cast is diverse, especially with the characters that are members of several groups. There is technically combat in this game. Calling it basic is an overstatement, but again, that is something that actually helps this game stand out. Nevertheless, combat in this game is essentially pressing X and seeing what happens with your character. If it's a grappler, they will shoot at the nearest person or object. Lightsaber users will swing their blades. Astromechs will disarm enemies. What else? I guess there's bombs with the bounty hunters, but that's the B button. Lightsaber users are the only characters that have multiple options for attacking, so I'll describe that real quick. For the average Jedi or Sith, pressing X while on the ground will result in the standard swipe, good enough to damage everything but another lightsaber user. A neutral X while getting hit with a blaster bolt will lead to a deflection. When in the air, you can press X and do a dive attack, which is kinda neat. And finally, doing a double jump and pressing X will result in a ground pound, or whatever is closest to a ground pound in this case, hurting enemies in the surrounding area. There's also force abilities, activated by B, which, while kind of useless, are a nice addition. Jedi mind tricks will temporarily confuse one enemy. Thank God I completely forgot that this was an ability, because I hardly used it. It has such a short range that you're better off doing a dive attack to just end their life. If you use a mind trick, you have to wait a second, hopefully not getting hit in the process, and then kill the enemy before the effect wears off. Similarly, Sith have the option to choke or shock an enemy to death, which is cool as shit, but yep, still fucking useless, since it takes nearly 3 seconds to kill one person. I appreciate that these were put in the game, but man, I wish they were used a bit more. The simple combat reinforces the low-stakes, laid-back feel that the game goes for in nearly every level. Kids will get used to it fast, and adults will mostly tolerate it. However, there are pretty large exceptions. It just so happens that when you make levels dedicated exclusively to the combat, in other words, boss levels, its flaws start to dominate. And unfortunately, as with most issues with the game, they are worse in the prequel levels. Original trilogy boss fights are either not the whole level, or are mechanically more interesting than the prequel boss fights. For example, Palpatine's fight is several stages of puzzles and Imperial Guard fights, while Dooku's fight is literally just walking over to him and hitting him. But when it comes down to it, both sections have huge issues, mainly in the fact that the combat is not in any way interesting or deep. You never notice it when you're mowing down hordes of battle droids or stormtroopers, but when you're locked in a room with another lightsaber user, it gets boring real quick. I'm going to take the Dooku fight as my chief example. Now yes, this is clearly the worst one, so it shouldn't be taken as a complete generalization of the levels, especially original trilogy levels, but it is the most obviously flawed. This level is literally 3 rooms, 2 of chasing Dooku, and the last is an open area for the fight itself. Dooku does not put up a fight. He'll stop you from getting near him after a couple hits and start to throw objects at you. Then you hold down the B button to hit them back at him again. After this beautiful dynamic plays out for a while, he'll shock one of your characters, requiring you to switch to the other character to swipe at him. Then you just hit him a couple more times. Now I'm sure that there is some sort of way to fight him using openings in his attacks, but that requires a certain amount of work. The problem here, and with every subsequent boss fight, is that you can win this fight only using ground pound. There are no consequences to ground pounding. It always lands, and he will always fall over. And repeat. That's it. It's fucking boring. This is why the later boss levels in the original trilogy are much better. They are more focused on the puzzle parts. For example, the Vader fight in Episode 5 is structured around outsmarting Vader, and then hitting him once or twice every so often. Hell, Jedi Destiny is just a huge boss fight, and it's a pretty good level regardless. With Dooku, it's just use the Force, hit him, switch characters, hit him, rinse and repeat. No creativity or tension.
Just like the fight in the movie.
In short, the combat is extremely simplistic, and it's better off as not the main focus of the game. Levels that focus on combat extensively, such as Grievous and Dooku, then end up as the weakest non-vehicle levels in the whole game. By the way, the Grievous level was actually hilariously short. I finished the level in under 2 minutes for this footage. Alternatively, the mediocre combat can be obscured by a legitimately interesting mechanic, as in Darth Vader, or by a much larger and more complex level design, as in Jedi Destiny. Fortunately, like the vehicle levels, TT Games has demonstrated that it has learned from its mistakes, as the combat in the later LEGO Star Wars games, especially The Force Awakens, is legitimately good now. But for this game, it's hard to ignore the weak levels that this hindrance creates. While I may have gone over the largest and most important aspects of this game, there's a lot of little things that add up to the experience. This section will focus on these minutiae and how they fit into the game as a whole. I'm gonna admit I have a soft spot for hub worlds in video games. There's just something so warm and inviting about these areas, which give you brief respite from conflict, that no other level can quite give you. Think Super Mario Galaxy's Comet Observatory, Mass Effect's Normandy, or Borderlands 2's Sanctuary. All of them make you feel comfy and cozy while serving an important role in the game. Mos Eisley Cantina is one of those areas. Now, part of this comfort has to do with the iconic scene that this area is based upon, this is obvious, but the game manages to make it into something more than that. This is where you can see all the characters you've bought, buy objects at the store, create your character, access all levels, see Figure and Dan pop off on the sacks, and look at your mini-kits. Most importantly, it feels alive. The shopkeeper will move around and polish glasses. Characters will wander around multiple areas, and occasionally pick fights with their enemies if they see them. Sometimes that happens a little too often, though. Is that a glitch or something? I'm not sure. Each episode has a theme in its starting room, along with an activity to do. It all adds up to making the cantina feel lived in. Sure, it's not as sprawling and complex as, say, New York City in LEGO Marvel Superheroes, or the ships in LEGO Clone Wars, but its small size makes it have a hell of a lot more heart to it. This hub world is just so effective and iconic that the game would hardly have a lot of its charm if it were removed. I mean, imagine if this game had only level select screens. Sure, you're left with the great levels and it's technically the same game, but it just loses so much in atmosphere and identity. It's a huge reason why this game caught on with so many people in my opinion, despite it being a relatively small part of the game itself. Something else that I briefly touched on before, this game has a character creator, carried over from the second game. In it, you can mix and match parts of different characters to create your new OC Jedi or Sith, or whatever the fuck this is. As a kid, this is pretty fun. You have plenty of combinations to choose from, but now, it's just kind of okay. I mean, I appreciate that it's there, but I play Star Wars for Star Wars characters, so I completely ignored it this playthrough. So much so that I didn't even notice that there are technically 2 secret characters available through this method. Yep. Once you 100% the game, you get access to all the parts for Asajj Ventress and Saisi-Tin? There we go. Something very cool about Asajj is that she is technically based on the original 2D Clone Wars show, so this is the last canon Star Wars media with this version of her in it. Something very cool about Saisi-Tin is... he was in the Clone Wars for a couple episodes? Oh yeah, he's in Revenge of the Sith too. Oh. Why was this guy chosen as a 100% completion bonus? Why not the other guy who was killed in that scene? Aegon Kalar? I don't know, maybe this thing? Or Yaddle? Fuck me, Yaddle would have been incredible. Anyway, another hidden character is Indiana Jones. Yep, if you missed him your first playthrough, he's not too hard to get. Just watch his movie in the trailer doorway in the bonus section of the cantina, and boom, he's only 50,000 studs. He's a neat Easter egg and a nod to the then upcoming LEGO Indiana Jones game, which is also a pretty solid game. Although I haven't played in a while, so who really knows. I personally had better feelings towards LEGO Batman 1, but they're probably both still great. Possible video in the works? Anyway, he's a fun addition. Did somebody say bounty hunter missions? No? Okay, I'm gonna bring them up anyway. So these are mini-levels that involve finding characters in previously played levels. Alright, interesting idea. What else? That's it. You find a character in a time limit, which you are nearly guaranteed to get with these character placements, and boom, you get a gold brick. Yeah, I was never really sure why these are in the game. They're just sort of there for you to get easy gold bricks. I mean, the idea is cool, and it's expanded upon in LEGO Clone Wars, but man, they are really forgettable at this game. I doubt many of you guys even remember this. Not bad, just forgettable. One last thing about this segment. I love that Jabba is the one to give you missions, but by God, I always thought this meant that he was a super secret playable character, and this drove me mad. Playing as Jabba would have been the shit, but I can see that programming this character would have been a total nightmare. That being said, my dream finally came true in LEGO The Force Awakens. I am mildly happy now. If you want to 100% this game, which I recommend you do if you really like this game, you're gonna have to put up with some time trials. Mildly annoying, but what are you gonna do? At least it's some actual challenge in this game for once.
And not completely artificial difficulty.
One trial requires you to get all medikits in a level by a certain time limit, and another forces you to speedrun each episode in under an hour. Some of the later episodes, like 6, can give you a real challenge in this regard, which I respect, but for the most part, these time trials are pretty straightforward and uninteresting. The real shit that makes gold brick hunting worth it are the bonus levels. I mentioned before that the original levels, the pod race, gunship cavalry, and A New Hope, are included in this area, but a couple others are too. The most interesting level is hands down Anakin's flight. This is a vehicle level, but it's one of the okay ones, because there's no goddamn tow cable. It's actually based on a level that was scrapped at the end of development for the original LEGO Star Wars. It looks a little different now, but it still carries over a few mechanics and overall environment. I actually didn't get to play this level as a kid. I must have been too stupid to understand the concept of bonus levels at the time. So playing this level as an adult is like looking at a time capsule, kind of like that deleted SpongeBob scene. You know the one. Anyway, the level is pretty neat. It's mostly blowing things up with smart bombs on the exterior and then blowing things up with smart bombs on the interior. But the environment and graphics are superb. Definitely give this level a shot if you want to give this game another playthrough. Lastly, there are 2 LEGO City levels, which place you in an open environment to collect 1,000,000 studs in any way possible. These are really fun, especially going in blind, because nearly every object in these areas will net you studs. Something is just so cathartic in smashing Legos, I just don't know why.
Cool.
Only issue with these levels is that searching for the last studs can get annoying, especially since some are really hard to figure out. But I think these levels as a whole make for fun side content. And that's the game. Whew. Yeah, there was a lot in there, but I wanted to make sure I fairly covered every part of the game. Even the parts that we all forget about.
Bounty hunter missions.
I shit you not, I think this game is one of the most important pieces of Star Wars media ever. Why, you might ask? Because it was the first successful attempt to rehabilitate the prequels. The complete saga came out in 2007, right before the release of the Clone Wars TV show, and right off the heels of Episode 3. So it was in this sweet spot of near complete contempt of the prequels. Sure, Episode 3 had been released to positive reviews, but there was this deep animosity held by the Star Wars community, as embodied by the Plinkett review of Episode 1 that came out soon after, in 2009. Fans were not happy at the awful dialogue, the bland direction, the nonsense story, the dropped plot lines, the flat characters, and so on. I really do not need to explain the core criticisms of the prequels in this video, because it's been done to death, but those were the common complaints. But for the kids who got this game for Christmas, they didn't give a shit. To them all the characters looked goofy, the cutscenes were funny, the gameplay was exciting. There was no clear difference in quality between the old and the new, so they loved it all. To them, the Yoda that jumps around with a lightsaber to fight Dooku is the same Yoda as the one who trains Luke on Dagobah, because he is the same character. Those are his abilities no matter what episode you play on. The Star Wars fanbase is infamous for its collective disagreement and often vitriolic tendencies. And while that is undoubtedly true in many scenarios, I'm looking at you, prequel memes, I find that there is actually a lot that Star Wars fans agree on. You just have to know what you're looking for. You see, to find consensus in the community, you have to strip away the plot of the movies. I know, it sounds crazy, but hear me out. Ignore the convoluted plot of Episode 2, the disjointed pacing of Episode 6, and the ass-pull retcons in Episode 9. Just forget about it all. Instead, focus on the aesthetics. Is there a Star Wars fan who does not enjoy Binary Sunset? Duel of the Fates? Ray's theme? You'd be hard-pressed to find one. John Williams' score is so unbelievably perfect that it just becomes Star Wars. There is hardly any dissent on this case, a sentiment similarly found in art design. Darth Maul, Count Dooku, General Grievous, Palpatine, Ahsoka, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Boba Fett, Kylo Ren, Captain Phasma. They all look fucking awesome, regardless of character writing. Don't forget about planets, too. Tatooine, Hoth, Endor, Coruscant, Kamino, Mustafar, Takodana, Crate, and Exegol are incredible designs, and are the clear results of hours of work done by talented artists. Lightsabers are fucking cool. Who cares if they're blue, red, purple, green, white, or yellow? So when a game like this comes along, focused entirely on characters, backgrounds, vehicles, and music, And completely devoid of any story dialogue, you are designing a love letter to Star Wars. And that's why I think this game really caught on with people. Why it became the smash hit and the start of a lucrative, successful franchise. It distilled the essence of Star Wars and mass-produced it to a young audience. It normalized the prequels to both young kids and die-hard Star Wars fans. And it did this long before prequel memes, before Backlash to The Last Jedi, hell, even before the Clone Wars show. Sure, it took a while for the fanbase to completely accept the prequels. There are still some detractors today, but it no doubt helped in jumpstarting the unification. Of course, it was ultimately due to a combination of complicated factors, but I believe it started with this tiny game about Lego Yoda screaming. And by God, it's going to happen again. LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga is coming out later this year, and like the complete saga, it is going to retell all mainline Star Wars movies at the time. This time, we've got 9. Those 3 extra movies, the sequel trilogy, are the newest Star Wars media we have gotten. And like all new Star Wars content, it's gonna come with a lot of criticism from the fanbase, be it warranted or not.
Hint, it's mostly unwarranted.
There's been a lot of vitriol towards these movies by a non-insignificant portion of the fanbase, and a lot of debate over the movie's quality, quite similar to discourse in the early 2000s about the prequels. But I believe that the Skywalker Saga will begin to mend things once again. Until, of course, the next Star Wars trilogy comes out and the fanbase hates it and we're back to square one again. It's an endless cycle. Anyway, let's get to something more interesting. Wait, I made a whole segment on LEGO. At this point of time, LEGO Star Wars is in somewhat of a meme renaissance, especially with regards to LEGO Yoda and his, well, you've heard it already. It's his death sound, and it is fantastic. Fun fact, it's actually from this scene in episode 2. Every time a playable character dies, they let out an incredible dying scream. God, they are just something else entirely, man. As for why this is in the game, I have no clue whatsoever, but God, it makes for great unintentional comedy. Death sounds are nothing new to video games, but these death sounds, these things had never been unleashed upon the world until the 21st century. It just adds to the charm of the game so well. Here are some of my favorites. Yes, that's the end of the segment. It's short, but what were you expecting? Here, take this last one. Great. Now on to the last segment of this far too long video, so I can take a goddamn break for once. LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is a monumental game, both in content and cultural significance, so it's hard to give the whole game a proper analysis, but I tried my best. This game took a simple game design, mixed it with tantalizing collectibles and a vast array of characters, and adopted the atmosphere of Star Wars to make something truly unique. It elevated the LEGO games from peculiar little sandbox oddities to best-selling linear collectathons. And it's just utterly fascinating to me that it worked as well as it did, and how I was able to say so much about it. I honestly could say even more, but I think this video does a good job explaining the essential elements without being too pedantic. Unless you just really, really wanted me to go over the level design of the Dagobah level, then, well, I'm sorry, man. The Complete Saga is in no way a perfect game. I don't think anybody is going to contend that this game is up there with the likes of Breath of the Wild, or The Last of Us, or Shadow of the Colossus, especially considering the vehicle levels and overly simplistic combat. But man, for what it loses in technical prowess or genre-defying game mechanics, it gains that special charm to it that very few games have come to match. It's so universal to Star Wars fans, and even some people only mildly acquainted with the franchise, no matter the age. Yes, the gameplay is optimized for kids to not get frustrated or held up on one level, but it's also perfect for adults who want an easygoing adventure through the franchise they know and love. In any comparison of this game to other movie tie-in games, this is going to blow its competition out soundly, and by large margins. Even among Star Wars games, it's easily on top of the list in terms of quality, and there's pretty good competition in that category. There's just so much love put into this game by Traveler's Tales, something evidently lacking with other movie tie-in games looking to make a quick buck off of a mediocre movie release. Seriously though, if you grew up with this game and are curious how it still holds up, just play it. You'll be pleasantly surprised. And if you're a Star Wars fan who somehow hasn't played it, try it out. It'll act as a good predecessor to the upcoming Skywalker Saga game, and you'll finally understand what the heck this sound is supposed to be. And that's really all I could say about this game. The game that took up such a huge part of my childhood and is still the reason why I collect so many LEGO sets. I might come back to replay some levels in this game, but for now, after all the work I put into this video, I'm laying this game to rest. But man, I am hyped as shit for the Skywalker Saga. Unironically gonna be my game of the year. I'm calling it. I cannot wait to see what sort of obscure characters that'll be in the game, and just how big the cast will be. In any case, thanks for watching this video. I've been wanting to make this one for months, but never got around to it. Maybe I'll make more videos like this, but hey, this channel isn't known for its consistency. Bye bye.